Hello and welcome to my world. I'm of course Fred Cass, and as you know, 7 nights a week I stream live over on Twitch playing a variety of video games, and the link to my Twitch channel can be found in the description below. Now, as you know, as well, at least once a week, a stream is dedicated to Star Trek Online. Now, this week we played the Spectres story arc, which is one of 3 story arcs that you cannot play until you hit the level of 65. Which is really funny because when you think about it, you can be a new player starting. You can start up Star Trek Online, create a character, and you can play any story arc you want and out of order, all you want, right from the get go for some ungodly reason. Mainly because the people at Cryptic Studios are a bunch of fucking idiots. But you can't play 3 important story arcs until you're hit the level of 65, which makes no goddamn sense. See, a few years ago, when the Age of Discovery content started being added to Star Trek Online, the whole Ja'ula, Klingon story arc, basically all the modern content is basically following the stuff, referencing things to Star Trek Discovery. And to a lesser extent, Star Trek Picard, a lot of content that was important to Star Trek Online in terms of the in-game lore, particularly on the Federation side, in terms of things involving the Federation's interaction with the Klingons and help resolutions and things of that nature, were basically removed, while 3 specific story arcs were put behind the level gate wall of 65. The 3 arcs in question are Spectres, which is footage of what you're seeing here, the Lost Dominion, which involves Deep Space Nine and the Dominion forces, and basically acts as your first true interaction with the proper Dominion in and of itself, and the Cold War, which involves the Breen and the Ferry, and introduces the players to the Preservers, which is a major plot point because the Iconians nuke the planet where the Preservers are located, where you find them at. But if you play things out of order it doesn't make any sense. But when you play these things in order and when they are supposed to take place, they make a whole lot of sense. Now, if you're doing what I have done repeatedly over the years, where you create a character and go through everything step by step in the proper order, you start noticing that things get referenced at one point or another. There are a number of things that get said to the players. It's like, oh, I remember you from an earlier mission and so forth. As a matter of fact, there is a Vulcan that you meet very early in a Federation officer's character's progression on Vulcan, who ends up becoming becoming a Vulcan ambassador. She's the aide to the ambassador that you pick up that turns out to be a member of an Undine, or species 8472. And there's references to having met before and so forth. There's a Romulan character that you meet called Adriani, who has trouble sleeping at one point, and then your character asks them, you have the option of asking her if she's sleeping well later on. So things get referenced all the damn time, and content from the story arcs get referenced as well. Particularly the 4800 one is like Wei-Un asks about a conversation. It's like if you talk to your superiors about what he and you discussed during the mission to release the female Changeling that was basically behind the entire mess of the Dominion War in Star Trek Deep Space Nine. And it gives justification as to why she is involved in things during the whole Herc nonsense, because that's the same character. So it's like, how did she get out of Federation custody? It's like, well, she was basically released because you needed the Dominion's help to deal with this involving a fleet. And even with that fleet, there's a Vorta named Loris who when you meet her 4th incarnation during that Herc story arc, she basically says to the player that her previous incarnation was a source of grief for the player. So you kind of have that, and so you have all these little things, and you know, there's references to having met before, and so you have all these little things, and so you kind of have that, and so you have all these little things, 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 and so you have all th but you can't play these missions until you hit level 65, which doesn't make any sense at all. And my only theory as to why these are level gated is the people at Cryptic Studios are fucking idiots. They have no, there's no question that they are, because for whatever reason they created a sub faction, the Dominion, which, like the Romulan Republic, you can align with either Federation or Klingon, but there is no content exclusive enough to the Dominion to actually justify even creating a character, unless you want to play as a Jem'Hadar, because basically all they have is access to all the missions the Federation or Klingon officer starting up in 2409 would have access to, and that's it. It's like, oh, they're just replaying holographic simulations of these missions that were important to events of in the Alpha Quadrant, because they created a faction without justification, without the content to actually justify it. Again, I'm not even kidding on it. It's an actual thing. So, and on top of that, they said, oh, we want to streamline the story experience. Well, there's a problem with that. When you have an MMO, the last thing you want to do is remove content or hide content or make it content tougher for players to access, which adds importance to the story, gives extra details to the story that is happening. Can you imagine? I don't play World of Warcraft, but could you imagine if you're someone who is starting up WoW for the first time, and like major plot points you cannot access until you have reached a certain level to get context? Let's say this was content that actually gives context to the story, and building up the story makes you invested in what's going on. Can you imagine if Blizzard actually did that and just say, you said, no, you can't access this important content here, this important story content, unless you jump through X amount of hoops and to get to it? It's like it's like knowing that it's there, and if they don't actually say it's common, if it's not common knowledge it's there, it just insults the player base. Or can you imagine if Star Wars The Old Republic, they did that? And trust me, for as Star Wars The Old Republic definitely needed some things, cut down in terms of its grand scope, but everything in Star Wars The Old Republic is straightforward. Like they kept adding to the base content. Star Trek Online, they basically have straight up removed content, not replacing it in any shape. Or if they replace it, they replaced it with something. They replaced 3 missions, 2 missions, and replaced it with 1, combining 2 missions into 1. Fine, okay, good. But what about the stuff that's been removed and have not been brought back yet, or basically level gated? It's a bad practice. It insults the longtime players who like me, like going through the story in order, and getting all the lore and being reminded of certain things and so forth. But yeah, that's just my opinion. I could be wrong, but I'm not. It's just my way of just talking about my annoyance with this. Well, anyway, that's all for this week's rant. Hope all of you had a happy holidays and y'all have a happy new year. Talk to you next time. Bye.